the Ireland of their time and gave us the Ireland of today. Now, I'm not going to give a kind of a timeline history at all of the club here at the GAA, just a few snapshots of the most sort of important or most notable events in the history of the club. I suppose everybody would be aware of the 1890, because we don't let people forget it anyway, I suppose, but we keep reminding people. And in one way, it's a very hard act to follow for the club. In 1890, Aghabullogue won the All-Ireland. It was Cork's first hurling All-Ireland. And at the time, the All-Ireland was based on a club championship. The county champions represented the county. And true to form, there was lots of controversy following this too. There are records and reports of hurling being played in the area, in the parish. I suppose it wasn't the parish as we know it now, but in the parish, in pre-famine times. Football was not as developed. Football was known as goal, and it was basically more or less a faction fight without sticks. And the ball was thrown up, and the idea was to get the ball as far away as possible towards the opposing border. So hurling was played here, and the hurling that was practiced in what Tom Long used to call Park na Peka, that's the field up in Peak Cross, in Connie Dineen's field. When the Musgrave Light Railway was developed in 1887, when it started, it was a huge boon to the development of the games. In 1887, there was a tournament organised by the club here, and believe it or not, there were 33 teams entered in it in 1887. And of course, it was won by Aghabullogue, who beat a fancy St. Finbarr's team in the final. Anyway, to get on to 1890, Aghabullogue beat Grenagh, Ahina, if you don't mind, Blarney, and Inniscarra in the Mid-Cork final. And the score was, in the Mid-Cork final, was 1 point each. Right? So, Inniscarra, true to form, lodged an objection saying that they scored a score that wasn't allowed. The replay, anyway, was that Aghabullogue scored 1 goal to 2 points. Now, at the time, even if Inniscarra had scored 20 points, Aghabullogue would still have won, because a goal was worth more than any number of points. They beat Ahada in the county final, followed by the inevitable objection. They beat Kilmoyley, North Kerry, in the Munster final. Now, Kilmoyley is still a stronghold of hurling in Kerry, as are a number of clubs in that particular area. And hurling in Kerry is, well, it's not totally confined to North Kerry, because you have a pocket down around Kilgarve and Kinmare as well, and little maybe in the major towns. So, Cork and Wexford played in Clonturk Park in the All-Ireland final, Clonturk Park in Drumcondra in Dublin, followed by controversy and objections again, because the game was not completed. From all accounts, from this side of the country anyway, Aghabullogue tried to play hurling, but their opponents didn't. Now, Biokshin Maratha. The 1890 Cup was, I suppose, a source of controversy, and it still is, because the cup would have been presented to the captain, and the captain, Dan Lane, from all accounts, gave it to Dennis O'Mahony, who was teaching in Aghabullogue, not the Dinny Manny that we know, but a different Dennis O'Mahony, was teaching in Aghabullogue at the time. And when he was made principal in this boys' school in Macroom, he was given the cup by Dan Lane. And Dennis Griffin, then in Tripsy, would have been a grandson of this Dennis O'Mahony, so that's how the cup ended up controversially in outside the parish. But to be fair to the Dennis Griffin and the Griffin family, anytime we've ever had use or need of to show off our cup, there was never a problem about it. This particular weapon that I have here is a replica of the type of hurleys that were used in 1890. The original is in Kilmurray Museum, and you can see it designed for a different type of a game altogether than the hurling that we know now. It is a lot of ground hurling, very little soloing, and designed for removing body parts of the opponent if so required. So anyway, we'll move along, and hurling was always played then, maybe from, I suppose, the 1930s down in what is known as the enclosure or the showgrounds down here. And I can remember myself back in around 1960, I suppose, when I started playing. We used to share what were known as dressing rooms with Jerry Dineen's sheep. Jerry Dineen's sheep were kind of fulfilled the function of a lawnmower. And the pitch was always in great nick, as I remember it. But that shed or that hut was down, say, opposite Cormac O'Donoghue's gate. And it used to be always filthy. But anyway. I'm going to skip right along to 1955, but I'll talk about it later if I can, because that comes under the heading of Cred A, no Cred, kind of believe it or not. And after 1955, the club was suspended for a year, and I'll go into the detail of that maybe a small bit later. No, but I remember myself as a young fellow in the late 50s and early 60s. The club was at a low ebb, and there were a number of people who, I suppose, rekindled the embers, and chief among them was Jerry Dineen, that would be Peter's father. You know, he believed that there was enough talent, if it was organised properly, to form a viable club. And I suppose his efforts kind of bore fruit back then in the late 60s to I remember the first underage competition that we won for donkey's years was an under-16 competition in 1967. And I suppose I should mention as well that in 1967, Gussie Morris, became chairman of the club, and he could see that there were a lot of young hurlers, particularly, who had, potential. And Murty Murphy and Jerry Hubbard were instrumental in organising training. And last Thursday, Murty Murphy and Jerry Hubbard were in a Aghabullogue school, as usual, as they do on a weekly basis, coaching hurling, 55 years on. So, yeah. So anyway, we won. We started winning hurling competitions. We won the Big Cork in 1973, and between that and 1991, we won 10 Big Corks, which I suppose is a good record. But the question would have to be asked, is how the name of God did we not go on and win a county in one of those years? But we didn't anyway. 1991, we won the county after many years. And looking around there, I know Dennis O'Connell is there anyway. He was one of the starring half-back line that we had at the time. And we've been playing intermediate since then, to a greater or lesser degree of success. Football, I remember football, personally, we played with a minor football team in 1967. And we entered the team. In 1968 then, we didn't have a team. And a lot of us, I played with Kennedy, and there was fellas played with Donaghmore and Macroom, and they were all over the place. So because of that, there was need to organise a football club here on a more permanent basis. And it was only, say, in the late 80s that football was given a real push by the likes of Johnny Buckley, who came from Kilkenny, which sounds like a bit of a contradiction. But Johnny was instrumental in promoting football, because otherwise, you know, there were a lot of fellas who were interested in playing football, and fellas who were interested would have gone to other clubs, and would have, you know, it would have been disruptive. So, and in 2004, and eventually the footballers won Mid Cork and won the county, and they've been plying their trade at intermediate since then, and doing quite well, and hopeful for this year as well, playing next Saturday in Mill Street against Knocknabree. Anyway, the buildings down there, in 1969, the pitch was, the lease on the pitch was up, and it was, I suppose there was a choice of continuing the lease or buying it. So it was bought for the princely sum of 6,000, which was thought to be an outrageous sum at the time. And it was very cheap, really. Thought it was good value. And the dressing rooms, which would be the near part of the building down there, they were completed in 1975. The new pitch that was bought from Jackie Horgan, it was bought around the year 2000, I forget the exact year. The AstroTurf over there was built about 5 years ago. The walkway is another development which is there for a few years now. And the next development is a ball wall. You might ask, what is a ball wall? I made the mistake of calling it a hurling wall, but I was quickly reminded it was a ball wall. That I shouldn't be forgetting about the football either. But anyway, the ball wall will be there on the border between the Dairy Gold grain area there and the parking, and it will be an AstroTurf surface, and it will be floodlit, and it's a useful amenity for fellas to develop their skills. The future, I'm not so sure. Lots of things will need to be done, like the hall below will need to be modernised. I presume the toilets will need to be changed. The floor in the hall is causing problems, so there will be no shortage of jobs. No, I want to be keeping it too long, but to get back to the 1955. 1955 was a time that the people of that generation did not talk about it. I remember Finbar Barry Murphy, and he wouldn't discuss it, good, bad or indifferent, because it was embarrassing, really, and I'll tell you why. In 1955, Aghabullogue won the Mid Cork, and they had 5 clerical students, in other words, studying for the priesthood in Maynooth, and they had to go back to Maynooth before the county championships were played. And they would have been, say, Father Finbar Kelleher, Father Mick Crowley, Father Michael O'Brien. Remember the canon that trained the Cork team? Yeah, he was staying locally. He played with us, Father Michael O'Brien. We'd have Father Stephen O'Mahony and probably Martin. So, but anyway, there were 5. Now, it was quite common, we are told, that teams would pack a team. In other words, because before social media or cameras or anything, like, you know, and if you needed to improve your team, you would put somebody else under a false name or whatever, and it was quite common. Or So I'm telling you. But what happened then was, Jerry Tipp gets a lot of blame for bringing 5 players from Tipperary to improve the team. Jerry Tipp came from Cashel, and his brother Mickey played with Cashel King Cormac's and played with underage with Tipperary. And anyway, Tipp had access to players. Now, what the arrangement was, there had to be some financial inducement, but what the arrangement was, I don't know. But Tipp shouldered a lot of the blame, but it was really a committee decision. And so they played Bantier in Macroom and won, and then the next round was the county semi-final against Castle Lions, and they won that too, so sort of, with the aid of the Tipperary players. And the Castle Lions objected. Now, it transpired afterwards that Castle Lions had only one illegal player. So, but even though the Monsignor in Macroom, who would have been on that Castle Lions team, Jim O'Donnell, he would deny that. But, so, anyway, the case went to the county board and the club got a 12-month suspension. No, that was pretty harsh. No, it meant that the club was suspended from fielding teams. The players were not suspended. So a lot of the players went and played with other teams. The likes of Noel Connell and Jimmy Toomey, and I don't know that was there anybody else, but they played with Blackrock. And Noel would have been an excellent player, and he would have played with Cork teams as well. And it took a long time for the club to recover after it. And as I was saying previously, the likes of Jerry Deneen and others, but the men to whom great credit is due for dragging the club out from the floor and getting it going again. I have a poem here, and I have a number of copies, and it was a famous poem, and it was also a song, I suppose, and one of the airs to the song is Skibbereen. So Skibbereen is a sad old song, and this is a sad old poem too, in a way. But I remember, a lot of you will remember Keffo, John Keefe, and Keffo used to love to sing this song in the pub, particularly if there were any GAA enthusiasts in the presence, so that he could rub his head. But I have it. Okay, here goes. Come listen a while, my countrymen, and hear my mournful news. Although my song be sorrowful, I hope you'll me excuse. The tears roll down my cheeks like dew whenever I recall Aghabullogue long suspension now from playing a hurling ball. In 55 we won Mid-Cork, I'm telling you no lie. To be the Mid-Cork champions then, it filled our hearts with joy. The cup was filled and drunk and filled and drunk again, till the pubs ran out of whiskey and they filled it up with gin. We'll be the county champions now, they shouted loud and high. And sure their chances were not bad, had they the guts to try. But someone then grew windy, saying, boys, we'll ne'er survive. So we'll pick a team to be supreme, and no one will be wise. Jerry Tipp was standing near, said, that's no bad idea. In the county of Tipperary, there are friends who are dear to me. They are senior men who are big and strong, as I will let you see. So fix the date and pay the rate and leave the rest to me. In the castle grounds we met Bantier, a team both young and gay. Aghabullogue marched onto the field from Tipperary far away. And the spectator jumped up and shouted in wild surprise, saying,
The jerseys, they're there all right, but where are all the boys? In Mallow town of famed renown, we met old Castle Lions, a victory on the road to fame to pacify our minds. The Tipperary men were there again. Their hurling was supreme. 'Twas a victory by Tipperary for the lovely white and green. But never again the Tipperary men will wear the green and white. Aghabullogue's game has been found out, and now they're keeping quiet. The county board, they tried the case and sentenced there and then. They got 12 long months suspension for playing illegal men. No more down at the enclosure gate will tall Jim Goulding stand. No more will Arthur Roach crow about his hurling team so grand. Aghabullogue are spectators now, as you can plainly see. But early in the new year again, we'll hoist the white and green. So, it's a masterpiece of a poem, really. So, tá sé áráid, tá sé críochnaithe, so tá lán de thrastála go fóil. So, Doug, I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.